Hey everybody, this is Sam Gross from electricbikereport.com, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the BULLS Alpine Hawk EVO. This is a 250 watt lighter weight offering from the German manufacturer, and to put it short, this is an e-bike for people who like to pedal. So BULLS built the Alpine Hawk EVO around a Class 1 250 watt mid-drive motor from Fazua. And I'm actually holding the whole thing in my hand right here. This is the battery and the actual motor. It drops out of the entire bike, and it's a 252 watt-hour battery, so it's a little smaller, which keeps the weight down. But the top half of it is the battery, and then the bottom half, everything below, is the actual motor. And at the bottom of what they call the drive pack, which is this whole thing, you've got this coupler. And this coupler mates up with a mechanical system in the bottom bracket that actually transfers the motor's power from the crankset to the rear hub. So this has two really cool things. The first is that you can remove this whole system, and Fazua actually sells a blank of this tube that you can put into the bike that brings the weight down and allows you to ride it as an analog or an acoustic bike with no motor power. And then the second thing is that because it's just a mechanical system inside the bottom bracket, it keeps the bottom bracket really, really small. Now, this bike is a really, really stealthy e-bike. You really can't tell it's an e-bike. Everything is just compact. It's really neatly tied into the frame. Aside from you, no one's got to know it's got a motor. So, as we mentioned before, 252 watt hour is not the biggest battery, but what that does, I'm gasping climbing uphill, but what that does is it trades a little bit of range for a really solid weight. This bike only weighs 33.5 pounds, which I don't know if you can tell, this is kind of a steep hill, but I'm able to talk going up of it thanks to the lightweight and the 250 watts that the motor puts out. And you'll hear more about how this thing climbs later in our hill test. But for now, I'm going to try to not wheeze too much. So stealthy really is the name of the game on this bike. You're not going to find any sort of display or switches or touchpads on the handlebars. All of that is handled right down here on a touchpad that's mounted onto the down tube of the frame. So this kind of reminded me of like using a down tube shifter. You have to reach down to operate it. The power button is right here in the middle, and then these are two touch sensitive pads up and below and above the power button. And that's how you cycle through your three different pedal assist settings, which are Breeze, River, and Rocket, or you can think of them as PS 1, 2, and 3. So another cool thing about this smaller motor and battery is Fazua's made a really quiet bike. You can't hear it while you're riding around. It's super impressive. Like, I'll be in the highest assist setting, trucking up a hill, not going very fast. There's not much wind noise, like maybe you can probably hear the wind noise right now, but I can't hear it. I gotta put my ear down next to the motor to actually hear it running. So compare that with the fact that there's no display, no e-bike buttons on the handlebars. It's super easy to forget that this is an e-bike at all. It's, as someone who came from a road racing background, super nice and a really pleasant transition into the world of electric road bikes. So the Alpine Hawk comes with the full Shimano Ultegra drivetrain. So this is the R8000 series of Shimano Ultegra. It's an 11-speed drivetrain, really, really crisp, clean shifting. It's exactly what Shimano is known for. And in addition to that, it's got hydraulic brakes, the Ultegra hydraulic disc brakes, which I came from a road racing background where we used rim brakes, the old caliper style, and these are a huge improvement over that if that's something you're used to. And if you're a new rider, they're incredibly powerful brakes with a lot of modulation. You can really adjust how much pressure you're putting into the brake lever, and the bike will respond accordingly. So typically on our e-bike reviews, we'll do a circuit test where we're trying to test all the differences between the pedal assist settings, but that's not really applicable to this type of road bike because this type of bike, it's super fast on its own. On no assist around our 1 mile circuit, it did 17.4 mile an hour average, which is super close to its 20 mile an hour top speed. So there's really not much wattage it's going to take to at least on a relatively flat course, get up to the top of the motor-assisted speed. And we really debated on whether or not to keep this data in our review. And the reason we did was it finally illustrates what this bike is for. This bike is not for trucking along on a flat road at class 3, 28 mile an hour. This bike is for taking the edge off of the parts of road riding that can be really difficult. Things like accelerating from a stop, climbing steep hills. And that's where this bike just really shines. This is a traditional style road bike, so it comes with drop handlebars. They're a BULLS brand aluminum bar. I found them really comfortable. Sometimes with aluminum bars you get a lot of vibration, but this bike in general, it just dampens vibration through the carbon frame, and it's got a lot of what we call vertical compliance, which means the bike flexes a bit over the road. So the aluminum handlebars weren't too rough, they were fairly comfortable. It's got standard road bar tape. Again, it's a no-name brand. I assume it's something that BULLS has. And then your shifters, if you're not familiar with road shifters, all of your braking and your shifting controls is done right in these levers. Moving back to the seat, this is a Selle Royale saddle. It's the Asphalt GF series of that saddle. It's pretty comfortable. Something we find a lot on road bikes is the saddles typically come stock are fairly narrow, and road saddles actually come in different sizes that are going to match up to your sit bone, so it might be worth getting measured. This was very comfortable for me. It's got a little bit of a depression in the middle to keep all kind of the soft bits that you want blood flow going to. So BULLS sells this bike in two sizes, a 54 centimeter frame and a 58 centimeter frame. So I'm 6'1", and I typically ride a 58 centimeter, or sometimes if a bike's got a really long top tube, I'll ride a 56. But BULLS set me up with the 54 centimeter version of this bike, which they say will fit someone up to 6'2", which is just a little bit higher than, or taller than what I am. This bike actually fits surprisingly well, considering it's actually the smallest frame I've ever ridden. And I was really impressed with how I didn't feel cramped, I didn't feel too stretched out. It was just a really comfortable ride. But something that's worth noting is I have very long legs for someone of my height. And if you look at this frame, the seat tube there's a lot of it showing. And I actually have the seat tube almost maxed out on the frame. It's right up against what's called the minimum insert line, and you don't want to raise it up any higher than that. So if you're like me and you have longer legs, it might be worth considering to size up to the 58 centimeter. It's just something to keep in mind. This is a really nice handling bike. It's got a snappy carbon frame, but it's not so snappy and so stiff that it beats you up. Like right now, I'm out here riding the Veyo Loop, which if you live in the West or you live in the Southwest in particular, and you ride road bikes, you've probably heard of. Most of the roads are really smooth and nice like what I'm on now, but there's occasionally some times where you get into some rougher stuff. We're going to do a hill test here in a moment, and that's going to demonstrate how much assist you actually get from pedaling uphill with the motor on versus not having it on, which the hill we're going to do on this loop, the Veyo Loop, we call it the wall. Just shy of a mile. It's like 3/4 mile, maybe a little more, but it averages at 7%, which for road riding, that's a pretty decent hill. It's pretty serious. So we're going to see just how this bike does in two settings, no assistance, and then also at the maximum assistance level, aka the rocket mode. So as I alluded to before, I'm now climbing up the wall, which is 3/4 mile of probably not feel good because I don't have the motor on. So right now, I'm able to talk, doing okay. Can't really feel that much, but I don't think that's gonna last very long. So we'll see how this all pans out. I'm hurting, man. I said before I used to race road. That was a while ago. And without the motor on this thing, I'm doing okay. You know, 33.5 pounds is definitely not light for a traditional road bike, but for an e-bike, it's not bad. But without the help of the 250 watts, especially as it pitches right here, I'm hurting.
certainly start to use a little more of that 1132 wide range cassette. I'm actually in the 32, so the easiest gear, which more of a testament to how well thought out this bike is than not so much a testament of my climbing ability. So while I try to catch my breath and not throw up, that was hard. Pedaling an e-bike, even a light one, without help from the engine is, with a motor, pretty tough, but I'm glad this thing didn't weigh any more than 33.5 pounds, because that would have been a tall order for me. I'm not the hotshot racer I used to be. That's the humbling takeaway from this. And the other takeaway is it's a good climbing bike. Even with all my wheezing, I hope the camera captured that this is a pretty well climbing bike. Oh. So now for my second lap, I'm going up the hill on the max PIS setting, which gives me access to the full 250 watts. And we're at the bottom portion, and I can already tell a difference. Like, for example, I'm still in my big ring, and this part last time, I was hurting real bad. So let's see how this goes. So you can probably just hear it in my voice, but this is helping incredibly up this hill. I'm still working, but I'm not like desperation pedaling like I was in the no pedal assist setting. I can, especially when I get up and stand on it, as long as I can muster it, the motor rises up and meets whatever I'm putting into the pedals, and I'm already getting close to the top. Like, there it is, I can see my sign. But it is a really impressive difference in just the amount of power. Like, I'm about to cross the line here, and I don't think I dipped below 14 miles an hour. So that was the line, that was it. It was almost anticlimactic, because it just, on no PIS, I was just so ready to hit the top. Whereas this, I feel like I could just keep going. But I mean, I do have to say, well, this thing is exceedingly powerful. I'm still working. Like, the people that say electric road bikes are cheating, they can eat crow, man. Like, this isn't made for racing. It's not made for going out in there and competing. And even on Strava, they've got their own category. But if you're just out riding by yourself, it's a blast, man. It just takes the edge off. So now that I've collected myself a little bit here from what was two pretty considerable efforts up that hill, it was a big difference between no pedal assistance and the highest pedal assist setting. I did 6 minutes and 15 seconds with no pedal assistance, and I did 3 minutes 49 with the max pedal assist, which is 250 watts of power on top of what I've got. It made an incredible difference. But mind you, I was still working. My heart rate was still high. I was still sweating. I still pushed the top of my helmet and got a bunch of sweat coming out of it, but it was just more fun. It's a nice feature to have, especially if you're out here riding by yourself and just don't really want to have to kind of desperation pedal up a steep hill. But anyway, I'm near in the town of Veyo, and I hear there's some Mexican food, so I think we're going to take a little break today. So we came to Veyo for the Mexican food, but we stayed for the pie. So if there's one thing that I want you to keep in mind about the BULLS Alpine Hawk EVO, it's that subtleness is kind of the name of its game. Not only does it look really, really subtle, it's got no e-bike controls on the handlebars, it's got a really small
252 watt hour battery. Everything is just kind of compact. You can hardly tell it's an e-bike. It's very stealthy. The power that you actually get out of that motor is incredibly subtle. So in the highest assist setting, which gives you access to all 250 watts the motor can produce, that's when you can kind of feel it kick in, and that's really useful on steeper hills. But on the two lower settings, which give you 100 watts and 210 watts respectively, it's really gentle. It just kind of pushes you along. And keep in mind, this is a class 1 e-bike. The motor cuts out at 20 miles an hour. And on a bike like this, on a flat surface, it's really easy to just hit 21, 22, over that class 1 max without really trying that hard. You can just kind of cruise on the flats. So where you really feel the motor on this bike, where it really shines, is on hills, things false flats that are maybe like 1 or 2%, the stuff that just kind of sucks the energy out of you, and then at low speed accelerations. This motor has more than enough oomph in all 3 assist settings to just give you a nice push. It feels a lot like having a nice tailwind behind you. It's like giving just that extra 10 or 20% on top of your own power that just takes the edge off of some of the tougher parts of bicycling. And don't get me wrong, you're still working. All the miles I've put on this bike have been a really awesome workout, but I'm not the high-powered road racer that I used to be. But this thing at times made me feel like it. It made me feel that same sensation of just kind of clipping along at high speeds and going around corners fast. And it's just a great bike. And so overall, we've really enjoyed testing the BULLS Alpine Hawk EVO. It's been a really great bike. And if you've liked this video, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to know more about it, we've got a much more in-depth review, and you can find a link to that review in the description below this video. And for Electric Bike Report, I'm Sam Gross, and we'll see you next time.